Stockbox.
Annyeong! Welcome to Dollightful. This is the Stockbox series, where we pluck a sad, forgotten doll out of storage and throw together a new character on the spot without any prior planning. It can be inspiring, it can be disastrous. I often waste a lot of time doing things out of order because, again, no planning. But no matter what happens, we have fun. I let you guys pick the base, and who did you vote for? The mermaid. This is Sirena Von Boo, a Monster High doll, quite a broken one. In a previous life, she must have been well played with and gone on many adventures, but now her hair is matted, her joints are floppy, and goodness, she's missing her forearms. If a doll ever needed some TLC, this is it. Bring her in! Now, as promised, I do no planning ahead of time. But I have been incredibly inspired by the work of April Rose, a doll customizer I discovered on Instagram. Well, actually, I've been following her for ages. Just look at these masterpieces. I love the chunky horns and ears, the bold and striking design choices she employs in her face-ups, and those bright, rich color palettes are like candy for the eyes. Very much inspired by her style, I knew I wanted to channel her for the next doll I made, which happens to be this mermaid, I guess. To the workstation! First things first, let's ditch that matted clump of hair. Dunk the doll into boiling hot water to get the head nice and squishy. Sirena probably doesn't mind because she's a mermaid. You don't mind, do you, Sirena? With the head softened up, it should easily pop off the body with a firm tug. Remove the remaining stubble by running a pair of pliers around the inside. Then extract the hair from the neck hole. Nice and clean. She's such a pretty doll. Like most dolls I work with, I really love the original character. Back in their heyday, Monster High was constantly hitting them out of the park. Okay, so arms. I realize now that perhaps you were expecting me to make some new arms from scratch, or maybe you anticipated the construction of some sort of tentacle-limbed monstrosity. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint, but I took the easy way out this time. Yeah, I just found some loose arms in the bottom of the stock box. Although oddly enough, they feel a little rubbery and don't stay connected as well as they should, which tells me these are likely knockoff doll arms. Sometimes you get less than stellar supplies when you buy used toy lots to use for customizing, so I guess I'm getting what I paid for. I was so hyped up after looking at April's work that I couldn't wait to bust out my acrylic paints and cover this doll from head to toe in a fresh color scheme. What looks good together? You know, it's hard to go wrong with purple skin tone. Purple always looks cool. Yes, I didn't even bother taking off her factory face. It gets painted over anyway. Also, I'm out of acetone. The body can be purple too, but while the acrylic is still wet, I work quickly and throw down a gradient to blue, and then mint green. Acrylics dry quickly on the doll's plastic surface, so you gotta go fast. Guys, look at that! All I did was throw down some paint and I'm already in love. I can't believe how beautiful Sirena looks in color. I'm so used to seeing this doll in black and white. However, I got ahead of myself there. I should have fixed the broken tail and sculpted the horns and ears before painting the doll. Oops. I was just so excited about color. Well, time to get the clay out, I guess. I modify the fin on her back slightly to look chunkier and more visible. Then I patch the broken area at the front of her tail. There's a huge crack running down her fin where the pieces have nearly separated. Obviously, glue alone would be too weak because there's not much surface area there to hold it. So I drill oh so delicately into both sides of the broken fin. I wanted to drill neatly down into the plastic so I could hide the wire, but oops. Well, a little wire showing won't be so bad. It'll be worth it for the strength of the repair job. A touch of glue will further secure the new armature wire in place. Nice! That's never coming apart again. If you've ever watched a video from me before, you know I love my armature wires. I don't think I've ever made an ear or horn modification without an armature wire. Well, we're trying different techniques today, friends. I want a smooth, soft set of horns coming right out of the forehead, so I sculpted them directly on the face, pop them off to shape them a bit, then stick them back on the forehead to make sure they dry with the correct curvature at the base. Something like this, maybe? Same thing for the ears. Big chunky shapes formed out of air-dry clay, then stuck to the doll. I reckon her natural ears will help anchor these to the head. I thought this time around we could give our mermaid your classic starfish bra, so I mold that directly to the doll too. Once the clay fully dries, I scratch off and tidy the edges. Same goes for the other clay additions. They get a nice amount of sanding to buff out my fingerprints and even the surface. Along with bold design choices and great color palettes, April's great about using high contrast with her dolls. For this reason, I chose dark black hair. This is Black Magic from dollyhair.com, a gorgeous nylon hank that I've used for many past projects. I found that the nylon hairs from dollyhair.com really do behave in style quite well. Take a plug's worth of hairs, slip them onto your Reroot tool, which is just a needle eye cut at an angle, and insert the plug into one of the holes on the doll's head. I generally block out one full day to get the Reroot process done. It tends to take about that long. Fill the head with glue to secure those loose plugs on the inside of the head and let it dry overnight. I filled in the normal amount around the hairline, but look closely and you'll see I kept it very thin and sparsely rooted everywhere else. I've got an idea that calls for a thinner reroot. I'll show you what I mean later on when we style the hair. Okay, now's when I should have painted the body. Instead, I'm going for round 2 to patch up the areas I damaged sculpting the clay on, and of course paint our new clay pieces. I love the gradient, but it is a rather large swath of uninterrupted purple, so let's make the design more interesting with little dots, or scales, that trail up her tail to her hips. I think this came out really cute. The mint color I used almost makes the scales look like lichen, so sort of a nature theme creeping in. I bet the dots would look cute on the horn tips and ears as well. And heck, let's fill in the eye whites while I've got the paints out. Why not? It certainly saves you time trying to build up whites in the eyes later on. With the adorable scales all dotted on, it's time to seal in the paint using matte varnish. You saw how quickly the acrylic chipped off before with just a bit of rough handling. This stuff will lock down the paint and stop that from happening, as well as keep the colors bright. Shake it up real good, cut it with water, and apply 2 to 3 coats. On to the face-up! If ever you are curious, a list of materials I use for any given project can be found in the description box below this video. Before we begin, I place the horns on the forehead and lightly trace around the bases. I've made the mistake before of doing a face-up only to have the horns touch or nearly conceal part of the face I've drawn. Then I start things off with a dusting of dark purple pastels over the cheeks, nose, eyelids, and a little on the forehead. In makeup terms, this is like contouring, although for dolls you can also introduce different colors into the skin, like red, to breathe a realistic color variation into the lifeless plastic. You can then use a kneaded eraser to shape the shadows further. With the basics in place, I give the doll its first spray of Mr. Super Clear Sealant. Think of this stuff like making a new layer in Photoshop. Using watercolor pencils, I begin to define the lash lines, eyelid wrinkles, eyebrows, and lips. Because I gave her dark hair, it's only appropriate for her face to be equally sharp and contrasty. I really love dot-shaped eyebrows for some reason. In this case, they match her round scale pattern, so it's appropriate, but I honestly have to stop myself from giving dot eyebrows to every doll. They're just so cute! One of the best parts of Stockbox is feeling out where the project is taking me. I found myself enjoying the hard contrasting black lines of the eyes and lips, and I started thinking those blank white eyes might stay blank. She could look like a deep-sea spooky mermaid or something. I would have sprayed a fresh layer of sealant on at this point, but I'm running dangerously low. I think I've got maybe one more spray's worth in there. First acetone and now MSC. I need to go to the store. I got out micro glitter pigments and filled in the eyes to see how that looked. Neat effect, but doesn't feel finished, does it? It needs something more. Well, I've got lots of fun sparkles. Maybe we could work some of this stuff in there? Alright, am I nuts, or do you think we could use these holographic sequins for eyes? It's so crazy it just might work. I trim them down at the top to match the curvature of the eyelids I've drawn, then place a generous dot of glue on the eye. The sequins are slightly 3D, so we want to make sure they adhere. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that worked! How gorgeous is this? They look like inset glass eyes or something, but they're just sequins. I should have done this with Luna's face up. I was not satisfied with how her jewel eyes came out. This looks way better. Once the glue is thoroughly dry, I delicately drill into the center of the sequin to widen the pupil and create a concave dent. There's a couple more details I want to add with paint, but I don't want her eyes to get any more 3D than they already are. If they start popping off the face too much, it's gonna look weird. With a touch more black paint, I fill in the new pupil and delicately outline the sequins to define the edges of her irises. A touch of white highlights enhances the contrast even more. Lastly, I continue the scale pattern down from the ears to across the cheeks. It might have made the face up a bit busy. What do you think? Does it draw too much attention away from the eyes? Next, add a layer of gray mush over the sequins. Just kidding, I'm only temporarily masking off her eyes with sticky tack. I don't want the matte sealant to take away any of that glossy sparkle. And now we can finally use that last remaining spray at the bottom of the can to seal the deal. Now we can stick on her horns. Ah, Catherine, no. I know you want to make an armature wire, but this is just air dry clay. Glue alone should be sufficient, right? I have my reservations about the strength and longevity of glue-only horns, but one thing that can be said about them, they're much easier to place on the doll. Whereas I had a hard time centering Guinevere's horn, glued-on horns are much more forgiving and can be nudged around into position before it dries. Oh my word, I am in love with this doll! She might be my new favorite! Let's style that hair! Check this out. I've been meaning to make some sort of styling stand for years now because it's already hard to style doll hair without a proper stand, and even harder to keep that stand in frame if you're filming a video about it, because you're tugging the hair all over the place. So let's clamp this sucker to my work table. There we go. Okay, so you're probably wondering what my idea was for her hair. Well, blame Pinterest. I fell down a rabbit hole after discovering this style called festival hair, or like elaborate hairstyles people do for music festivals and stuff. There were some really awesome examples I ran across that used colorful hair extensions, so I'm going to try and recreate that look on this doll. That's right, I'm going to try and weave in actual extensions, just like you would on a real person, which is why I kept the Reroot thinner and more realistic, I guess. The question is, what hair should I use for the extensions? I get a bad feeling that more nylon hair will be too slippery and difficult to work with. Well, you may recall I received this massive hank of hair in the mail from fellow doll customizer H. Ollie Crafts. At the time, I had no idea what the heck he sent me. It's huge, and it's a very coarse fiber. But now I know. This is indeed the exact kind of hair extension one uses for festival braids. Obviously, it's human-sized, but we can cut a portion off of it and use it the same way. Yeah, this little chunk should work. I also mix in a couple lengths of glow-in-the-dark fibers for fun. Okay, now to dive right in. I'm already having flashbacks to Seychelles. Why do I suck at braiding so hard? If you want a much better tutorial on how to do this, I'll drop a link below to the ones I watched. The idea is to weave the extension into the front by the forehead, then Dutch braid your way around to the back of the head. This was my first attempt. Not great. If you don't succeed at first, try again. Ah! Several attempts later, I got this. Acceptable, I hope. Although somehow I ended up with French braids instead of Dutch braids, I think. Ah well, I'm gonna move on. I wrap one strip of colorful extension around to hide the elastic, then thread it through the center using a big plastic needle. Now the fun decorating stage can begin. I section off clumps, tying some into bubble braids and others into traditional braids. I think what's so appealing about this style is not only how voluminous it makes the hair, but the splendor and richness of colors and textures is just so fun to look at and get lost in. I also thought bubble braids work for a mermaid, you know? Once all the elastics are in place, I work through all the braids one more time and poof up the bubble parts. Basically, I tug some hair out of place one segment at a time, working from top to bottom. That's looking poofier. The coarse hair texture definitely made this possible. I really don't think nylon can hold a shape like this. It's not quite as voluminous as I was expecting, to be honest. I don't think I could have added a thicker hair extension. It's pretty large and poofy at the top of her head. I guess extensions just work differently on a doll scale. Still, I'm pleased with this. You know, at the very least, I gave it the old college try. Heat up the head and reattach the body. What say we give her a modest sash or some minimal clothing? Is black too matchy-matchy? The white's too opaque. I think this light blue tulle looks good. I take a simple rectangle, scrunch up and gather the ends, and sew them together. What else have we got here? Stock box isn't only about using up doll fodder. I have other supplies as well. There's some neat stuff in here that matches her color palette. Coincidentally, many of these also came from H. Ollie Crafts, so he's helping me out a lot with this doll. How do you feel about sparkly crystal accents? I'm really leaning into the music festival aesthetic now, aren't I? How about a necklace? And these crystal pendants are so neat, I wanted to use 2 more for earrings. At this point, the doll is so extra, it just felt like something she wanted. She's so over the top and sparkly, she wants to be the center of attention. I swear these projects take on a life of their own sometimes. You artists out there know what I'm talking about. Sometimes the character just makes themselves. And with that, our mermaid doll is finished. I couldn't be happier with this mermaid. I feel like I really knocked it out of the park with this one, so I hope you guys are satisfied with her as well. Once again, I'd like to point you in the direction of April Rose Art and encourage you to visit her Instagram because this doll was so heavily inspired by her work. I feel like studying her style helped me create a more dynamic and striking character than I might have otherwise. On that note, thanks to you guys as well for voting for the mermaid doll. I wouldn't have chosen Sirena on my own, but I really enjoyed working with her. I wish I could take this doll to a dramatic ocean cliffside for a photo shoot, because that's honestly the backdrop she so desperately needs, but alas. We're not always in the position to travel to the best places for a photo shoot, are we? I guess I can try and Photoshop her into a stock image. Nailed it. Don't forget, I need your help choosing the next Stockbox doll. You guys have pointed out that so far, all the dolls this season have been animal-based. A total coincidence, I'll admit, but what do you think? Should we keep that theme rolling? Sounds fun to me. So let's mix it up a bit. Leave a comment with what animal or fantasy creature you think I should use for the next doll. Take a look at what other people commented too, and if you like their idea, give it a thumbs up. I'll take a look through your comments and choose a couple that are both popular and sound fun for me to make. Then I'll put together a poll you can vote on in a couple days' time. Thank you so much for joining me. See you next time. Stay artsy. Annyeong!